Guys, welcome to part 2 of how to get a rugby player's physique. Today we're working from the ground up. We're going to look at the lower body. Now guys, following a bodybuilding plan, doing some leg presses, some leg extensions and some calf raises just isn't going to cut it if you're trying to get a physique like a rugby player. And that's because a rugby player's legs need to be strong and powerful. Sure, if they have mass, that's great because it means that there's more momentum in contact, which can be very useful in rugby. But rugby players have to be fast, fit and agile. And so you have to train the lower body accordingly. Guys, in this video, I'm going to share with you my top 5 exercises or categories of exercises that you must be doing if you're trying to build a rugby player's physique. I'm also going to give you a bonus method that you've never tried before at the end of the video to stimulate growth in the legs. It's not a new method, it's an old school method, it's forgotten about method. I used it to get to my 200 kilogram squat, so every time I'm trying to add size and strength to the leg, I always use this method, but we'll talk about that at the end of the video. You're going to love it. But right now, let's dive into the exercises. So let's start with the squat pattern. That's one of our staple exercises, and it tends to be individualized to the athlete, so we can be going back squat, front squat. We also use the hybrid of the hinge pattern and the squat pattern in the trap bar deadlift. So guys, squatting is a hard exercise. You can't be lazy on squats. You have to keep everything tight. You need to create intra-abdominal pressure. This is relevant to rugby players because when you're taking contact, you're creating that intra-abdominal pressure to protect your spine. And that's one reason of many why squats are so great. So if you're doing back squats, you need to really be pulling down on the bar, engaging the musculature of your upper back, bracing at the trunk, and then get the quads, the glutes and the hamstrings to do the work. So there's no hiding on a squat, and that's why we love it. Guys, I've spoken about strength standards on another video, and you can check that out here. We want to get as strong as we can on the squat pattern because it's going to help with a lot of other things on the pitch. And strong legs are associated with line breaks and other key performance indicators on the rugby pitch. To give you an example, when it comes to speed, we're trying to get a back squat of around 1.8 times body weight and a front squat of around 1.5 times body weight. So if the focus is on speed, that's where your squat needs to be. It's not to say that you should stop at those numbers. You can definitely push to a double body weight squat, and that's great. But it is to say if you're trying to get faster, then it's not necessary to push those numbers, and you might even have diminishing returns in terms of where you're allocating time. However, of course, there are positions that will really benefit from spending more time working on static strength. So if you're spending all your time in a leg press, you should really consider squats and learning the squat because it engages the whole body. Yes, it's the legs that are doing the work, the quads, the glutes, the hamstrings, but you've got to actively brace in the core, just like a rugby player when they're rucking, when they're scrummaging, when they're tackling. Speaking of tackling, let's move on to the lunge pattern and the hinge pattern. Guys, from a lower body perspective, a tackle is just a lunge coupled with a hinge. So you want to get really strong in these movements, and that's where rugby players are strong. So the lunge pattern is often thought of as an accessory exercise that comes at the end of a session and people just do high reps. Don't be afraid to load up your lunges. We treat it as a primary or secondary strength exercise in season, meaning we go for our heavy squats, then we go for our heavy lunge pattern before we get into accessory exercises for power or hypertrophy or strength, depending on what we're working on. So we'll have guys using their body weight or 1.2 times body weight when it comes to lunge pattern. And so if you want a physique like a rugby player, don't be afraid to load up the lunges. So when it comes to hinging, the Romanian deadlift is a great exercise. This strengthens the hamstrings in a lengthened position and really targets the posterior chain and the hamstrings, the glutes and the lower back. As I mentioned, it's relevant for tackling, it's relevant for jackling, it's relevant for scrummaging, and rugby players get really strong in this position. So this might fit in as a secondary strength exercise after you've done your squat pattern. You go straight on into the Romanian deadlifts and you really build that solid base that rugby players have, and the same rules apply as the squat. So you have that intra-abdominal pressure, you have to be bracing while you're doing the movement. So you can't be lazy with this one, and that's why we like it. So the next exercise or category of exercises is plyometrics. Now these are crucial in your program if you want to be athletic and fast. As we said, you have to be strong, powerful and have big legs, but there's no point in having that size and strength if you can't use it on the rugby pitch and you can't express your strength really quickly. So far, we've been working just in the sagittal plane with these first 3 exercises. In plyometrics, we'll be going sagittal plane, frontal plane and transverse plane, which is great for transferring to the rugby pitch. Now when you're doing plyometrics, you want to be going from extensive to intensive plyometrics. You can take longer ground contact time, be dynamic, be ballistic, execute the shapes and patterns well with good movement, and then build into the more aggressive ground contact time where you're really hitting the ground and you're away. And obviously with the intensive plyometrics, you'll have less volume than with the extensive plyometrics. That's one mistake that people make when they bring in plyometrics to their program. They see whatever they've seen on social media and then they jump straight in. Start slow and build your way into it. But they're definitely going to be a game changer if they're not in your program now or you do them rarely, because it's something rugby players do to make sure that they can express their strength. Again, there's no point in being big and strong and slow. You want to be big and strong and fast. And speed is the most important attribute in sport, particularly rugby. So you want to be big, strong and fast, because then you have momentum for contact. Now rugby is all about exposing gaps and running at space. However, sometimes those spaces are filled with rugby players, and so that's why it's important to be fast, to be agile, but also to be strong and have some size behind you as well, because momentum counts. So guys, sticking with the speed theme, the next category of exercise is sprinting. So we use resisted sled sprints a lot here at BLR Rugby because that helps with our acceleration ability. Now forget about sports performance for a second. If you've never done these before and you do them properly, you'll start to feel your quads, your glutes and your hamstrings in a way that you never have before. But of course, rugby players use them to be fast off the mark. Now there's a couple ways to understand what's the optimal load to help develop your acceleration ability. But if you don't have access to timing gates, that can be quite challenging. And we did some internal research on this recently where we had two groups that went as high as 40% of their body weight and then worked down 30, 20 and 10% of their body weight on resisted sled sprints before going into free sprints. One group went through 40, 30, 20 and 10% within a session before they went into a 10-meter run. And another group pyramided down from 40 to 10% over the course of 4 weeks. We got results from both methods, so you can decide whatever works best for you. You can put this in at the start of the session, at the end of the session, go up to 40% and make sure you get a nice body lean to start with, because that's one of the purposes of the sled. Guys, remember that rugby player physique isn't a bodybuilding physique. It's that nice athletic V taper. So by training like a rugby player, you're going to have strong, powerful and athletic legs. So guys, let me share with you the method that I mentioned at the start of the video for growing the legs. One method of many is a challenge and it's really fun. As you can see, you're going from heavy front squats straight into back squats without a pause. You must do double on back squat as to what you did on front squat, and I like to pyramid from a heavy 5, heavy 4 and heavy 3 as you can see here. So guys, give it a go, let me know how you get on and enjoy it. Guys, if you're interested in strength and power and becoming more explosive, then I would definitely recommend checking out this video where I break it all down, how we test and how we train. If you check that out, I'll see you there guys. Thanks so much for watching. See you on the next one. Cheers.